Good evening, I'm Gotti Schwartz here in Los Angeles, and here are some of the stories we're following tonight. A white supremacist who killed 10 black people at a Buffalo supermarket gets life in prison, but not before getting rushed by a grieving family member inside the courtroom.
We never go in those neighborhoods and take people out. Don't do it!
Police at Michigan State University continue to look for answers on why a gunman with no apparent ties to the school went on a rampage, killing 3 people. Nikki Haley officially kicks off her campaign for president by going after politicians of a certain age.
America is not past our prime. It's just that our politicians are past theirs.
Then will the overdose reversal drug Narcan soon be available over the counter? And a rare video of the Titanic that's never been released publicly until now. The 19-year-old white gunman who went on a racist rampage at a Buffalo supermarket last year has now been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After pleading guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder and a single count of domestic terrorism, that life sentence came after a very emotional hearing in court. That's when family members of the victims addressed the gunman directly, and at one point, as a sister of one of the victims spoke out, all of it was too much for another family member to take. Here's that powerful moment as it happened in court.
You don't know a damn thing about black people. We're human. We like our kids to go to good schools. We love our kids. We never go in those neighborhoods and take people out. Don't do it.
Now, the man there who lunged at the convicted mass killer will not be charged, according to the county's DA. They said that they understand that emotions were running high. The Buffalo mass shooting took place at a Tops supermarket on May 14th after the gunman, a white supremacist, traveled 200 miles to attack the store's largely black customers while streaming live. The judge, Susan Egan, with these words for the killer.
There is no place for you or your ignorant, hateful, and evil ideologies in a civilized society. There can be no mercy for you, no understanding, no second chances.
NBC News correspondent Rahima Ellis joins me now. Rahima, a very emotional hearing in Buffalo today. What did we hear from the families of the victims?
You heard a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, a lot of almost surprise that someone would travel over 200 miles to come to their community and deliberately target them because they were black. As one woman said, her loved one was in the store and he was targeted for doing something that he could not escape from, and that was the fact that he was black. So there was anger, but I should tell you there was also some feeling of grace. One person said to the gunman, "Do I hate you? No. Do I want you to die? No." But at the same time, she's saying you have to account for what you did, the horror and the anguish that you made people feel. And so some people were looking past their pain, but they were still feeling it tremendously today. Even though this happened some 9 months ago, they felt it as if it were just happening moments ago. The lives of 10 people that were taken for no reason at all, families were saying, but for the fact that a white supremacist wanted to show how much he hated them, and he came to their neighborhood and shot them while they were in the supermarket. Gotti?
And Rahima, I know we heard from the shooter himself today. What did he have to say?
He was expressing some remorse, and it did not go over well with the people, the families of the victims in the courtroom. Listen to what he had to say.
I'm very sorry for all the pain I forced the victims and their families to suffer through. I'm very sorry for stealing the lives of your loved ones. I cannot express how much I regret all the decisions I made leading up to my actions on May 14th.
At At one point, he could be seen with his glasses off and tears running down his face as the families of the victims turned and looked directly at him to tell him how much pain they had caused them, and some saying quite pointedly they can't see a way that they will forgive him. Some saying quite pointedly that they wanted to hurt him. They wanted him to feel the pain that they were feeling. Gotti?
In today's sentencing, I know this is at the state level, 10 counts of first-degree murder, single count of domestic terrorism. What about federal charges, and is the death penalty still on the table?
Indeed, it is. In fact, tomorrow, it's expected that they will have in federal court what they call a status conference. I think this is something talking about how they will proceed with these federal charges. He's being called to account for 10 federal hate crimes. If he is convicted of these federal hate crimes, he could face the death penalty. Gotti.
Rahima, thanks so much. The 3 college students killed in the shooting at Michigan State on Monday included a 19-year-old who had dreams of becoming the first doctor in her family, a tremendous student athlete, and the president of his fraternity. Their names are Ariel Anderson, Brian Frazier, and Alexandria Verner. 5 other students were hurt and are still in the hospital right now. Memorials are now appearing all around campus, where students are grieving and they are still afraid.
We're not safe at the grocery store. We're not safe at the movie theater. We're not safe at school, whether it's kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, anywhere. Kids aren't safe and no one cares. No one's doing anything. There's no reform.
That frustration could also be felt on Michigan State's Capitol today, where a crowd gathered holding signs saying how many more and when will it end, pushing for stricter gun laws. Meanwhile, police are still trying to figure out why the 43-year-old gunman, who apparently had no ties with Michigan State, opened fire on its campus. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa joins us now from East Lansing, Michigan. Maggie, there's a huge crowd behind you for what looks like a vigil. How's the community doing tonight?
Yeah, I mean, Gotti, you said it and you can see it, right? Like there are easily hundreds, if not thousands here packed in front of. That's MSU's auditorium in the background here. And they've just been singing and there have been speeches and everybody's just coming together to grieve together. As you said, this has been one of several vigils that we've had just over the last, it's been almost 48 hours now since this shooting took place. And then we also had students staging a sit-in at the state capitol earlier today, turning their pain, hopefully they think, into progress and just letting the state lawmakers see their anger over a lack of progress on gun laws and things tied to gun laws like background checks and mental health access. Here's some more of what we heard from students earlier today at the Capitol. Take a listen.
It's really hard to come out here and see everybody talk and see everybody do everything they're doing. But without change, it means nothing. Look at us, validate us. We're kids. We've been kids this whole time.
We've been hearing so much pain from students and trying to stay back from vigils like we are right now, just to give them their space. But so many of them just really wanting to, again, express their pain, express their outrage. I also want to show you really quick this picture of a rock on campus that's been painted over several times. Most recently, one of the messages painted on it was "Allow us to defend ourselves and carry on campus," meaning obviously seemingly carry a concealed weapon or a weapon on campus. That was later painted over by other students, covering it up with the names of the 3 victims of this shooting. Gotti.
And Maggie, as all this is going on behind you, it's so important to remember that there are still people in the hospital, at least 5 victims that were taken to the hospital in critical condition. Do you have any update on how they're doing tonight?
Right now, the hospital says all 5 victims are still actually in critical condition, and they're declining to name those 5 wounded. One of the victims, one of the wounded, has been named by local media after reportedly her family posted a GoFundMe to help cover insurance for the treatment and for possible treatments that she'll need moving forward. We haven't been able to speak to the family firsthand, so we're declining to name her at this moment. And then amid all of that, there are also updates on the investigation you talked about, and we just want to say his name once. Anthony McRae, the 43-year-old man who police say was the the shooter in this situation. Initially, they said he had no obvious ties to MSU, but today, police and the FBI telling us they are looking at the possibility that he may have applied for a job here at Michigan State University. They didn't want to tell us what job, when that may have happened, how far it may have gotten in the interview process, but they said that is a possibility in this investigation, and that would be the first indication that we have of a possible motive or just a possible tie as to why it seems he targeted this campus. Scotty.
And Maggie, finally, and most importantly, can you tell us a little bit more about the students that passed, about the lives they lived and what kind of people they were?
Absolutely. I mean, you talked about some of the, the things that, loved ones and relatives and friends have wanted everyone to know. Like Ariel, her mother and her grandmother spoke to NBC News Digital today. I just kind of wanted to shed more light on who she was. Again, she wanted to be the first doctor in her family, specifically a surgeon. They said she was a funny, quirky person, that she was brilliant. She loved kids, and she was on track to graduate college early. Alex, we've heard, was a tremendous high school athlete, playing multiple sports, known for being a top student as well, and also just known for her kindness. And then Brian's family and friends as well have just coming out talking about how well liked he was, how many friends he had, and that, again, he was the president of his local fraternity chapter here at MSU. So everybody just spreading, their memories of these people and wanting everyone to know they were more than just a name listed tied to a shooting. They were people. They want them to be remembered. And they, as you saw today, want some change to come from this. Scotty, I'll send it back to you.
So many of those memories being kept alive behind you there tonight. Maggie Vespa, thanks so much. The first 72 hours after a disaster are most critical. So think about this. It has now been over 220 hours since those earthquakes hit Syria and Turkey. And despite all odds, rescuers are still pulling people out of the rubble. At least 6 more lives were saved in Turkey today, 10 days after those quakes, including a 42-year-old woman who was stuck under a building for 222 hours. That is 10 days. But as the death toll climbs to over 40,000 across the region, people in northern Syria are struggling as they wait for more aid that's not getting to them fast enough because of blocked roads and border crossings. Doctors Without Borders adding, quote, the situation is indescribable, and for now, we are alone. NBC's Matt Bradley is in Turkey with more.
9 days after those catastrophic twin earthquakes rocked this entire region here in Turkey and sent shockwaves through neighboring Syria, we're still seeing people being pulled out alive, including just today, a 77-year-old woman. Now, these miracles, we've been seeing them the entire time for the last week and a half, and they really have been astounding. True feats of human endurance accomplished by ordinary people. But the story today really is a little bit different. Despite all of these miracles, we are quietly, reluctantly seeing rescue workers moving from a rescue effort to more of a recovery effort and rehabilitation and taking care in terms of foreign aid and help to those who survived the earthquake, who are now living in the rough, outdoors, in mosques, in their cars, in schools, and in tent cities like the kind that we just saw in Adıyaman, which is about a 2-hour drive from where I am here in Gaziantep. We spoke with doctors there from an Austrian delegation, and they said that while the camp is more or less well taken care of, there are some very pressing needs. Primarily, while food is available, it is medicine that is becoming a big problem. And this is something that the World Health Organization has been warning about, the risk of infection. A lot of experts are worried that dysentery could be spreading through populations, particularly in camps like the ones that we saw in Adıyaman and throughout this region. And that's why medicine and really bathrooms, sanitary facilities are what are most needed right now to create or to try to forestall additional crisis upon crisis. Matt Bradley, NBC News, Gaziantep, Turkey.
And in one of what has to be the most bizarre mystery of the year, officials still can't say exactly what they shot out of the sky, not once, not twice, but 3 times over the last week above the U.S. and Canada. The government is saying at this point they don't think those objects were an immediate threat and might be commercial or benign. Still, they were shot out of the sky with Sidewinder missiles, and so far, no debris has been found. Today, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan spoke to MSNBC.
What this whole episode has shown us is there are a lot more things in the sky that are unidentified, are unclaimed, that need to be managed and dealt with, and we now have a process in place to do that.
The FAA is also facing questions about the reporting of unidentified flying objects. Today, the acting administrator testified on Capitol Hill. He said they have policies in place for protecting the homeland, that is, if they're followed.
As far as you know, those protocols are followed?
The protocols for reporting, it depends. I'm going to say that may be spotty. And I take that just from my own personal experience. Will everybody report that they saw a balloon? The answer to that is probably no.
And there is one person we haven't heard from yet. That is President Biden. The White House is reportedly trying to figure out if or when the president will talk about these objects. Peter Alexander is our chief White House correspondent. He joins me now. Peter, point blank, it is now days after we shot these things down with fighter jets. We still don't know what they were. What does that tell us about our airspace security? And what does that tell us about the administration's messaging on something that everyone seems to be talking about, but no one's getting any solid answers on?
Yeah, Gotti, and you're right. And until they were able to find and collect the debris, we may not get the answers that those folks are looking for right now. This, as you note, was Secretary Austin's first interview since the U.S. shot down that Chinese spy balloon. And then there's 3 other unknown objects flying over North America. Austin says that no one has claimed ownership over the last 3. You would think if it was from some sort of a private operation, a private company or a research institute, that they would have come forward. The White House's theory remains that it may have been harmless, operated by some type of research effort or a private company of some kind. Austin is defending the recommendation to shoot those objects down. He says that safety and security of the American people comes first. But the decision, he says, was made because the objects threaten commercial aviation. That's a point the White House has been reiterating. They say it may have been collecting intelligence. Still, Austin says Americans were not in danger. Here's part of his conversation with our colleague Courtney Kuby.
The fact that the U.S. military didn't know about these until recently, is that an intelligence failure? Was that a military failure?
No, it's how you use your radars. We typically are focused on things that are moving fast, and so it's a bit more difficult to collect on slow-moving objects like a balloon. And as they made adjustments, we were able to see some of that.
Again, only limited answers to these questions. Certainly no answers about exactly what they were. For its part, China, Gotti, today insisted that its balloon flew over the U.S. accidentally, and that it came in response, or that in response to the new U.S. sanctions, it's going to take its own countermeasures against, as it describes it, I think, relevant U.S. entities. So watch that space, so to speak.
And Peter, I know these fighter jets, they've got targeting pods on them. They've got video, sensor data. The objects themselves, they seem to now be described as commercial or benign. Do you think that we may see some of that video declassified, released on what happened? And is the president going to address this directly to the public anytime soon?
I think there's a lot of pressure, as you note, from lawmakers on Capitol Hill for anything that exists to be shared publicly. We've heard from lawmakers saying basically 95% of that, which they've been briefed on, should not be problematic to make it public. A White House official tells me today that there are these active conversations, as they describe it, about the right moment for President Biden to sort of address all of this publicly. They say the consensus among his team here has been to sort of wait, again, for more information. But that criticism from Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, it keeps growing. The complaint is that the White House isn't being more transparent. For his part, the president leaves for Poland, Gotti, early next week. That's the one-year anniversary of the Russian invasion, and officials say they've been discussing whether to have him speak about this before then, especially with initial review into the U.S. protocols now underway. Gotti?
Hopefully we'll get some answers soon. Thanks so much, Peter. And still to come, we just got our hands on never-before-seen footage 12,000 feet deep in the ocean. Think of it as kind of like a director's cut of what was captured during a dive at the Titanic nearly 40 years ago. A big reveal happening during the 25th anniversary re-release of the Oscar-winning film. Now tonight is just getting started. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley made it official today, kicking off her presidential campaign rally in Charleston, South Carolina. She's now the only major rival officially in the race against former President Trump, who happens to be her old boss. We're going to dig into that complicated relationship in just a sec. But Haley's announcement also makes her the first female candidate in the race, the first woman of color in the race, and the first woman of color to run on the Republican ticket.
I've been underestimated before. That's always fun. And I've been shaking up the status quo my entire life. As I set out on this new journey, I will simply say this: may the best woman win.
NBC's Ali Vitale joins us now from Charleston, South Carolina. Ali, I know Haley talked about her identity today as both a woman, a mother, and a daughter of Indian immigrants. She also explicitly has said this is not about identity politics. What do you make of how she's branding herself on the first day of her campaign?
Look, it's not surprising, Gotti, to see Nikki Haley both lean into the fact that she is the daughter of Indian immigrants, that she is a woman who has broken glass ceilings in the state of South Carolina, being elected as governor for 2 terms here. But at the same time, she was explicit in saying she doesn't believe in glass ceilings, and she doesn't want to make this an argument that's made of identity politics. And that's because every expert and strategist and operative that I talked to when I was writing my book about women in the presidency said the way that gender and race dynamics are adjudicated on the Republican side are completely different than the way that Democrats deal with them. On the Republican side, candidates show up how they show up. Of course, in this case, she is a woman of color, clearly standing at that podium saying that if she were to win not just the nomination but the White House, it would be historic. But she's also trying to make clear that she is running not on gender or identity first. Instead, she's running on policy and merit. Of course, those things aren't mutually exclusive, but it's a very delicate dance for conservatives because the base absolutely hates anything that sounds like identity politics.
And Ali, I love talking to you about gender and about a woman in the White House. You literally have written the book, even though it hasn't happened yet, electable. Don't want to ruin the book for people, but I do want to get your take. Republican, Democrat, what is a woman in the White House going to look like, and what's going to happen in 2024 as you start to see things now a little bit more crystal clear?
Look, I felt this way at the end of 2020. At that point, you had just seen 6 women run on the Democratic side, more women in one cycle than we had ever seen before. I felt at that time that we were never going to see a presidential cycle again where there were no women running in the primary. Now that Nikki Haley is in this race, that has thankfully come true. And look, with each new woman that runs, they are all completely different on policy, on demographics, on the way that they would govern and be an executive. The fact that Haley comes to this with clear national security credentials from her time atop the UN as its chief ambassador on behalf of the United States, the fact that she was an executive here in South Carolina who was tested in a multitude of ways, and the fact that she's able to sort of leverage her gender while projecting a new face of the Republican Party, all of that is something that we've never seen before. Yes, we had Carly Fiorina run on the Republican side in 2016. She was definitely not one of the more viable candidates if you thought of the tiers in that race. But the last time that you had a Republican woman who was considered viable and at the top of the field, it was 2000 with Elizabeth Dole. And so now in the year 2023, going into 2024, hopefully the landscape around how we talk about these candidates is a little bit cleaner. It gives them a little bit more of a clear runway that makes them just even in the way that we talk about them, in the way that voters consider them against their male counterparts. But again, I think it's going to be really fascinating when you look at the polling here. Republican voters say that the things that matter least to them are a candidate's gender and race. That makes a lot of sense because even as we've seen across the country, poll after poll say that they are ready and would vote for a female president. It's funny, as soon as you put a specific woman's name on that line, those people start being, in the words of some, unelectable. So in this cycle, we'll see how that actually ends up playing out.
Fascinating, Hallie. Thanks so much. Federal prosecutors have been investigating Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz for sex trafficking since 2020. And today, the Justice Department made the decision not to bring charges. A statement from Gaetz's office reads in part, quote, their investigation has concluded and that he will not be charged with any crimes. The The Justice Department started looking into relationships Gates had with women he met online and whether he had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl. So far, the Justice Department has declined to comment. And breaking news now out of El Paso, Texas tonight. Police say there was a shooting inside of a mall's food court. There is a large police presence on the scene right now. Officers say it is still an active scene. They're telling people to stay away from that area. This is a developing story. We're going to bring you more details as they become available. And after the break, a look inside the wreckage of the Titanic, the never-before-seen footage taken decades ago. Plus, the White House is getting charged up. A look at the latest push to make it easier to drive electric cars without getting stressed. But before we go, you gotta see this. This right here, that's Bailey. She recently escaped from her new home and went back to the shelter she once lived at. Get this, she rang the doorbell at 1 in the morning. Luckily, staff was there to rush in and bring her in. That's her ringing the doorbell. Bailey is now safe and sound. We're gonna be right back. And it's time now for some of the big headlines we're watching tonight. Raquel Welch died this morning following a brief illness, according to her management company. She rose to fame in the 1960s, starring in films like Fantastic Voyage, and even won a Golden Globe for her role in The Three Musketeers. She was 82 years old. Filming for the Rust movie will start again this spring, according to producers. It comes as the movie's star Alec Baldwin faces criminal charges for killing Helena Hutchins on set with a gun. Her widow will now be an executive producer on the film. No working weapons or ammunition will be allowed on set. And a deadly cyclone that hit New Zealand this week has killed at least 4 people, and that includes a child that was caught in rising water. The cyclone left flooding and landslides, bringing more destruction to the country than any weather event in decades. And Scotland's leader, Nicola Sturgeon, has made the surprising announcement that she will resign. She says after more than 8 years in office that she's exhausted and has become too polarizing a figure to lead the country's politics effectively. And fans packed Kansas City streets as the city celebrates the Chiefs' Super Bowl victory. Quarterback Patrick Mahomes and his team rode in a double-decker bus as fans cheered them on, and this team is celebrating their second win in just 4 seasons. And now to South Carolina, where prosecutors will wrap up their case tomorrow against Alec Murdaugh. The jury today is seeing footage of the moment investigators straight up asked Murdaugh if he killed his wife and son. NBC's Katie Beck has the details.
Jurors on Wednesday watching a recording of an interview Alec Murdaugh did with SLED investigators 2 months after his son and wife were murdered. In that interview, investigators asking Murdaugh point blank if he murdered his wife and murdered his son, to which he replies no. Also in the interview, questions about inconsistent statements. They also questioned the amount of time he spent at his mother's house on the night of the murders. He told them 45 minutes when he had previously said 20 minutes. Also in cross-examination, the defense attacking several points brought up in the video, such as why no DNA testing was ever done on the clothing of Maggie or Paul Murdaugh, and why investigators waited 3 months to search Murdaugh's mother's home that could have contained critical evidence in the case. They also had the SLED investigator admit that he used trickery to try and get Murdaugh to admit to things during the interview, and also lied to the grand jury that indicted Murdaugh. Prosecutors say they plan to wrap their case sometime on Thursday. The defense eager to call their first witness on Friday. Back to you.
Thanks, Katie. The White House is supercharging plans to electrify American roads. The goal is to make it a little less stressful when looking for a place to charge your electric cars on a road trip. Now, right now, the White House estimates there are 130,000 charging stations in the country, and the aim is to grow that to 500,000 by the end of the decade. Biden wants to do it with billions of dollars from the bipartisan infrastructure deal passed last year. And to get that done, the White House is working with automakers. Today, Tesla committed to opening 7,500 chargers to cars made by other companies. And General Motors and Ford have also made similar promises. Now, there are some states that already have a lot of this infrastructure in place. Here in California, you can drive from San Francisco to San Diego and never have to worry about finding a charge. But what about states like Texas? NBC's technology correspondent Jake Ward took an EV road trip from Houston to Austin, and about halfway through, he nearly ran out of juice.
Our final option, one random charger at this antique dealer's DIY hotel.
Oh man, this is literally my last chance. I do not have the mileage to get to Austin. We just barely made it here. And right now, that is the story of driving an EV long distances across so much of America.
And joining us now is NBC correspondent Jake Ward. So Jake, what's your sense of where the country stands on these charges right now? How much of the infrastructure is there and how much still needs to be done?
Well, you put the numbers up earlier, Gotti, and they are really pretty jarring, right? 130,000 is what we've got right now. As I experienced, a lot of those don't actually work or work too slowly to be practical. They need about 500,000 by 2030, according to the Biden administration's goals. But here's the thing. When we talk to private experts, they say we need in this country, especially in cities, anywhere from 1.3 to 1.5 million of these if about 50% of the cars and trucks on the road are really going to go electric, which is another big goal of the Biden administration. So we are a long way from where we need to be.
The $7.5 billion to electrify American roads. Exactly what are these companies going to get? Is that money to build some of these new charging stations? Is that money for some of the charging stations that may already exist, like in the case of Tesla?
Well, that's right. I mean, you're both looking at direct infusions of cash and also the sort of secondary effects that you'll get when more and more and more people are driving EVs, when more and more chargers are funded and put in. It means that there's just going to be a greater market, a bigger demand. I mean, you're talking here about the likes of GM, Ford, and of course Tesla, along with the charging makers, companies like ChargePoint, that all stand to benefit. I mean, you have to think here, Gotti, right back in the day, trying to turn the gasoline supply into a real industry took generations. And what we're looking at here is the Biden administration trying to take this and turn it into a viable industry more or less overnight.
And one of the things that a lot of people can empathize with if they have an EV is that range anxiety that you get. It's like your cell phone when your cell phone's at 1%. What can you tell us about the requirements for these new chargers? Do they need to be spaced at a specific mile apart, or is this going to be something up to the automakers and up to the industry?
Well, what's so interesting is, you know, when we did that story and took that road trip across both California and Texas, I got a lot of grief from people who said, you know, if you just drove a Tesla, you wouldn't have that problem because Tesla has one of the most mature networks out there. But the thing is, you can't at the moment use a Tesla charger unless you drive a Tesla. And that's why these new electric car charging standards are so interesting. If you do receive or benefit from federally funded projects, then you got to use a standardized plug. This may be dating me, but right, this is sort of the old, you know, Blu-ray DVD, you know, or beta VHS debate. It's going to settle that once and for all. They've all got to be a standard size, and that is a very big deal. They also have to have a minimum number of fast chargers. You can't have these slow chargers out in the middle of nowhere, which is the kind that I was trying to get, you know, to Austin using. And there's going to be all sorts of, you know, new standards around needing to be built in the United States and more. So we're really seeing, again, trying to sort of fast track what has been a very ad hoc process into an organized American infrastructure like we've never seen before.
Next time I see you in person, you'll have to ask me about the time I had a Tesla, ran out of juice across the street from a Tesla dealership and had to get a tow across the street. It was horrible. Thanks so much, Jake. And they are allowed back in their homes now, but not without some massive health concerns. People in Ohio want to know if it's really safe after a train carrying toxic chemicals derailed and caught fire near the Ohio-Pennsylvania border. Here's what some of them had to say at a town hall meeting earlier this evening.
I was scared for the water supply, for the air we breathe, for our pets, our property value, all of that.
A lot of fear.
not so much for myself. So what do I have? Maybe 10, 15 years yet, but it's my children and my grandchildren.
I'm doubting the water is ever going to be something I would want to drink. I don't own, fortunately. I rent, so that means that I can walk.
We've heard so many stories nationally and from other networks, and we don't know who to believe anymore.
And they're seeing things that indicate that we should not be here.
Yeah.
They want us to leave for weeks.
This is our
Is
house.
weeks enough?
Everybody that came here expects a hell of a lot more than what we're getting right now. I'm the mayor of a town of 4,700 people. If you think I can fight against the railroad, fight against the EPA, fight against anything like that, I'm crazy. My greatest concern is that my citizens feel safe. All right, this isn't for stump speeches. We want to answer questions. The railroad did us wrong. So far, they've worked with us and they're fixing it. But if that stops, I will guarantee you I will be the first one in line to fight them.
Can we wash our dishes? Can we wash our clothes? Can we hang them outside? I didn't know a knock on my door. I live 50 feet from the police station. Why didn't the siren go? Because our tornado drain. That didn't happen.
How long does the EPA plan to continue testing soil and water? This is Director Ann Noble. She's the head of the Ohio EPA. So I'm going to take her for her word when she says this.
We're in the emergency phase, getting all the product off the ground, getting the soil removed, getting the product removed. The remediation phase comes next. The remediation phase will take as long as it takes. There's a remediation plan we're working through right now with the US EPA and the Ohio EPA. We'll be here as long as it takes.
Let's dive into a story that is nearly 4 decades in the making. Today, you're about to see never before seen footage of the Titanic. That's it right there. This was taken in July of 1986, but it's never been publicly released. It is from the very first expedition to the Titanic. That wreckage was found 370 miles off the coast of Newfoundland and 12,600 feet below in frigid waters. Now, the Titanic sank in the North Atlantic on April 15th, 1912. More than 2,200 people were on board, and more than 1,500 died that day. But the big question right now, why did it take so long to see all of this incredible footage? For an answer, we're going to be joined right now by Andy Bowen. He is the director of the National Deep Submergence Facility at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Andy, this footage is quite amazing. Got to ask, why did it take 37 years to release?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gotti. I think, really the answer is that we've been going through our archives, looking at some of the legacy data that we collect with our oceanographic tools, and realized that in the process of, converting it into digital media, that, this material really should be seen. And so we're basically planning on streaming out what we can this evening and sharing it with people, because it's fantastic. Certainly important to recognize that these the grainy images that are streaming now have really improved over the years. And as an engineer, that's something I take a great deal of pride in. But it's wonderful to look at the sort of early years, I guess, of our efforts to explore the ocean, and in this case, the wreck of the Titanic.
I got to say, watching this is kind of like looking at old video of going to the surface of the moon. This was before iPhones. This is before supercomputing. This is before we were able to transmit images so quickly to the surface. As you look back, I mean, what are the big differences in terms of technology that you've seen, and what impresses you the most about going back to that video and seeing how that dive originally happened almost 40 years ago?
Yeah, I think the answer is pretty simple for me, and it's really the quality of the imagery. We're now used to, even in the deepest parts of the ocean, producing high-definition video that has incredible resolution in comparison to what you're seeing now. So those advances have been really profound.
And this is a graveyard miles under the ocean. It's haunting. It is dark. There's something moving about seeing these images. When you watch these videos, what do you see?
Yeah, they're definitely mixed emotions. I think I think again as engineers and technicians trying to build high technology to explore the deepest part of the ocean, or a deep part of the ocean, 2.5 miles down, there was a sense of, my God, we did it. We achieved our objective, and then very quickly, I think everybody realized that, my goodness, this actually was the site of a horrible tragedy where so many people lost their lives. So it was this sort of whiplash almost, I think, that many of us really experienced because of the nature of Titanic itself.
A moment of discovery and a moment of mourning as well. Andy Bowen, thanks so very much.
You're welcome.
A small can of it could save lives. So will overdose drug Narcan be available over the counter? Plus, before we go, we're keeping a close eye on a helicopter crash in Madison County, Alabama. NBC affiliate WAFF reports a Black Hawk helicopter with the Tennessee National Guard crashed this afternoon. Both people on board have reportedly died. We're going to bring you any updates as soon as we get them. We'll be right back. In Florida today, hundreds of people protesting Governor Ron DeSantis over his reach into what's taught in schools. Specifically, they're protesting DeSantis's recent rejection of an AP African-American Studies class in Florida public schools. The DeSantis administration blocked the course last month, saying it violated state law and was historically inaccurate. NBC correspondent Tremaine Lee has more for us from Tallahassee, Florida. Hey, Tremaine.
Gaddy, earlier today, hundreds of people from all across the state and across the country poured into Tallahassee at the church behind me. They gathered before marching about a mile to the old state Capitol building, where folks lifted their voices and spoke loudly about how concerned they are about Governor DeSantis eliminating this AP Black History course, but also about what the broader meaning, the broader idea behind erasing parts of history, because not just to them erasing school credits or curriculum. It's erasing part of themselves. I spoke to a number of people out here today, including a bunch of teachers. One who said he's currently actually in the classroom trying to navigate this space. And as a black teacher, it's really hard to not even be able to speak about your own history. Another teacher said that it's one thing to not talk about some of the bad, ugly things that have happened to black people, but it's another thing to wipe away some of the great things that black folks have done in this country. But I spoke to one teacher who spoke to the core of what this moment means. And for him, it's about politics, but also fear. Take a listen.
One of the things it looks like he's scared of is he don't want to cause any chaos between the different cultures, but I don't think it's so much about the difference in the culture. I think it's a difference in what history tells us. And we don't, a lot of times people don't want their forefathers to look bad, but when you're telling it the correct way, we're not telling it for division, we're telling it actually for union. So we can understand that every culture's history. So I think it means a lot to tell black history. It's very important.
That's right. He believes part of this is an entire country, or at least a state, reckoning with some of the things that happened in the past, but also that legacy and what it means for them today. Gaddy?
Tremaine Lee, thank you. A drug used to reverse opioid overdoses could soon be available to anyone without a prescription. You might have heard of Narcan. It's the nasal spray version of the drug naloxone, which for decades has been used to save lives. Today, an FDA advisory panel unanimously voted for it to be available over the counter. Now the agency will still need to give final approval on the decision, but this is a big step forward in battling the opioid epidemic. NBC medical fellow Dr. Akshay Syal is here to talk a little bit more about this. Doctor, can you give us a little bit of a Narcan 101? How exactly does the drug work, and what are some of the potential side effects?
Yeah, good evening, Gotti. I mean, this is certainly a big step. All across online, you're seeing doctors and addiction specialists really praising the move here by the FDA committee. So what is Narcan? Narcan is a nasal spray of naloxone, as you described, that we use when we suspect opiate overdose. I actually have one right here I'd like to show you. So a little while ago, I got certified here by New York State. You can see this little kit that they give you. And Narcan typically comes in a box like this. So it's a nasal spray. It looks a little bit like a Flonase or like an allergy nasal spray. And essentially what you do is you take 2 fingers here, and you see this little red button? You insert this into someone's nose and you push that red button, and then you get a little spray just like you would an allergy shot, which quickly reverses the opiate overdose in the brain. And so why would we use this? If somebody overdoses, what we really get concerned about is that their breathing slows down. You can see their pupils will constrict, they'll get really small, and their breathing will slow down. And if your breathing slows down and eventually stops, you can see why that would be deadly, and you can see why this is so important to have over-the-counter ready for people to use if they need to.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this injection form back in the day? I mean, it seems like we've made some leaps and bounds when it comes to the technology here.
Yeah. There's injection forms in the hospital. We often use IV forms. And this one, a nasal spray just over the counter. And the goal here, Gotti, really is to get this as easily available as something like ibuprofen or Advil, and really reducing the stigma behind the drug.
So what does access right now look like for the drug?
Yeah, so there's a lot of states right now. It kind of depends on where you live and which pharmacy you go to. That's really where the problem was. Yes, you could get it in certain areas by asking a pharmacist. You can always get a prescription, but there are some areas where right now you can even get it without a prescription by talking to a pharmacist. The issue is, and why this decision today is so important, is because that wasn't always the case. You could go somewhere to a pharmacy and they may not have it. So by the FDA, by the committee voting and the FDA's decision coming in March, whether or not to approve this, you really hope that this could increase access, reduce the stigma. People may be too afraid to ask a pharmacist for this. So really just getting it over the counter right next to a bottle of ibuprofen so that those who need it can get it the most.
And how soon can we see it possibly on a shelf next to one of those bottles of ibuprofen?
Yeah, so what happens now is in March, the FDA will consider what the advisory committee said today, and they'll make a formal decision. I should point out that the advisory committee today that voted, it was unanimous approval for this. There wasn't really a lot of pushback. So all expectations are for the FDA to approve this in March and hopefully in consumers' hands by the summer.
Dr. Sayal, thank you so much.
Anytime.
And after the break, she was helping kill spotted lanternflies, but someone called police on her. Now this 9-year-old scientist is being honored by Yale. Her incredible story is coming up next. A 9-year-old girl was out doing her part to save the ecosystem when her neighbor suddenly called the cops on her. Her mom shared what happened in a now viral video, which has led to a surprising turn all the way to Yale University. NBC's Maya Eaglin has her story.
Gonna go in? Yeah!
9-year-old Bobby Wilson is an environmental enthusiast. Last October, she set out on a mission to get rid of spotted lanternflies in her hometown of Caldwell, New Jersey.
I started seeing a lot of posters saying if you see this animal, stomp it.
The state of New Jersey has a campaign called Stomp It Out, which encourages residents to kill the invasive species if they spot them. Bobby learned about the campaign in school and went out to help with her own homemade bug spray.
I had my paper that I would write on it to show how many I saw in there, and after I sprayed it, how many were left.
But Bobby's efforts were cut short when her neighbor reported her to the police.
There's a little black woman walking and spraying stuff on the sidewalks and trees.
Bobby's mother says what began as innocent fun quickly turned into something much more serious when the police officer told her why he was called.
How did the event unfold for you that day? What were you feeling?
What I can tell you is it took my breath away. I was immediately in tears.
The neighbor's lawyer didn't give a comment to NBC News, but told CNN his client has apologized.
My name is Monique.
Monique took to her local city council to speak out against the incident.
Racism, intentional or not, is still racism. I'm not here to label anyone, only to share my point of view as a Black woman, a Black mother, and a Black resident in this town.
The meeting went viral and caught the attention of Yale School of Public Health Assistant Professor Ijoma Opara.
Immediately I saw that video, I was hurt. I took it personally, not only as a New Jersey native, not only as a Black woman, but as somebody who does this work.
Dr. Opara arranged an all-Black female-led science tour and a ceremony honoring Bobby for her environmental work.
I knew that I wanted to do something to change this memory that Bobby could have, with the police being called on her.
Bobby's personal spotted lanternfly collection was inducted into Yale's Peabody Museum, making the fourth grader an official donor scientist.
What was it like being on Yale's campus, Bobby?
Well, at first I didn't really know what Yale was because I don't really look into like colleges and stuff because I'm still in elementary school. But it was pretty fun and it was really interesting.
Now she'll be cited anytime someone uses her collection in their own research.
I'm happy that all of these good memories are taking a space in that day.
We all could do our part to save the ecosystem.
Maya Eaglin, NBC News.
Thanks, Maya. There's more information now about that shooting at a food court inside of a mall in El Paso. According to Texas police, one person has been killed and 3 others injured and are being treated at a hospital. Officers say they have 1 person in custody, and this is no longer an active shooting threat. That does it for us tonight. I'm Gotti Schwartz for Now Tonight. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.